she was about $14,000. Now, I paid $14,000 for a non-working brick of a Tesla in my driveway. So I started taking apart, but I removed literally everything from the car. However, I didn't throw everything away when I was finished with it. I legit kept everything because, one, the parts are worth a lot of money, and secondly, don't throw anything away until you're done the project because I'll never know when I'll need a wire connector or something of the sort. That's like a basic rule of thumb when we're building a car or even working on one. You try your best not to throw things away even after you're done because if something breaks, you wish you kept spare parts lying around just in case. So I'm sure you remember the clip where I was moving the battery pack, um, and there's 16 modules in a Tesla battery pack, and only four were destroyed in the flood. That means I had 12 modules that were still good. So I was able to sell those good modules for approximately $900 each. So with the $14,000 buy-in, I sold the modules for about 10 grand. So that brings us to about $4,000 with for a Tesla with no battery pack. So now the motor, I'm still not sure to this day if that motor worked, but I did sell it to a guy as flooded non-working, and he bought it for 3 grand. So that brought the total price down to about $1,000 for the car as it was. So for a Tesla Model S shell with no battery and no motor, it was $1,000. Now I thought the interior was junk, but again, I didn't throw anything away, and someone hit me up and offered to pay $400 for both seat airbags, which were still good, and a couple leather interior pieces and panels underneath the glove box. So after selling all those parts off, that brought my car cost for the car to essentially free. So Dolores was free after I sold all those parts off of her. So I had a free shell just kind of sitting there. So let's get to the white car. Remember, I had to buy another car to replace the flooded parts because Tesla won't sell you anything. So I had to effectively purchase a second Tesla to fix the first one. Now, I never really got a name for it, but let's just call it Slim Shady for simplicity's sake. Now, I paid about 14,500 for Slim Shady, and right off the bat, I needed the interior, the battery, motor, all electronics and wiring, etc., etc. Now, you'd think to yourself again, there's not really much left after I took that stuff. Well, there's actually a lot left. So I was able to sell all the good airbags that I didn't need in that car. The airbag, steering wheel, and dashboard for $3,000. I sold all the doors for 1,500. The shell itself I sold for 1,700, and the battery fuse and coolant pumps I was able to sell for $400. Now miscellaneous parts added up to another 1,400. Hatch motors, pieces of wiring harnesses, AC lines, a condenser, an air tank, subwoofer, and speakers. Those added up to 1,400. I also have a bunch of parts I didn't sell as yet. I still have the rear hatch and some interior panels, glove box stuff. But after calculating all of these costs, it cost $6,500 for Dolores as you see her today, running and driving. I believe this is the world's least expensive running and driving Tesla. Now it's 6,500 and steadily dropping for this car as I have more to sell. Would you pay 6,500 for this car? I don't really care if you would. That's a rhetorical question. But 6,500 is how much I paid for it, and I'm totally okay with that. Now, time spent. I purchased the car in January of 2016, the first car, Dolores, in 2016. You're probably like, oh, I'm not impressed. Well, I'm happy for you. But remember, I did two cars, okay? So it wasn't only Dolores. Let's just say taking apart Dolores, working weeknights, took me a month to take her apart in her entirety. I had to buy another car. So I had to spend another month, month and a half taking that one apart. Because remember, Slim Shady was at a storage yard an hour away from me. So when I wanted to work on the car, it was a 2 hour minimum just to get apart. And after I got all the parts, then the third stage was me loading things back into Dolores, which took even longer. Because trust me, the reassembly is 5 times harder than the disassembly. So, so you're probably like, well, buddy, that took a long time. I don't have time for that. With all that time that you spent, you could have just bought one. Well, first off, there's no way in hell I'm paying 70 grand for a used Tesla. I wouldn't even pay 40 grand for a CPO one. I figured if I could get it for much less than that, it's a no-brainer. It ended up being about 6 grand, and I think that's fantastic. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. Now, I want to emphasize that this is a hobby of mine. I don't need a Tesla. No one needs one. There was no urgency or necessity behind this. I have a pickup truck that suits my needs just fine. I have a running and driving car. So most hobbies, you after a while you look back, like I said before, if you make wooden ships, at the end of it, you're like, oh, cool, I have two wooden ships. This is fantastic. Me, I have my wife driving my little science experiment. And I say my wife's driving it because I'm not driving that thing. If it leaves me stranded, I'll be very upset. I'd rather have her get stranded than myself. But hey, I don't want to get stuck. It's honest. I'm going to have her vet out a lot of the issues initially. But anyways, that's where I am with that in terms of the time spent. I didn't mind spending that time at all because I considered it as a hobby. It wasn't labor for me. It wasn't work. The exit strategy for that plan was if things didn't work out, I would just sell all the parts and pretend the whole thing never happened.